Hello there. Thanks for tuning in. Today in the live chat, I have joining me Norberto Lopez with Long Beach Residents Empowered. It's a grassroots organization that helps disadvantaged communities go through affordable housing and protection. So, Norberto, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much, Sebastian and the Post for having us here. Really excited to be back. I really enjoy, being able to talk about what's going on in the community, and really happy to be here with you.
Yeah. And also joining us, we have Maribel Cruz, who works with Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. It's also a grassroots community-led organization that helps individuals with immigration policies and practices that respect human rights. So, Maribel, thank you again for joining us as well.
No, thank you for having us and having this important conversation to try to shift the narrative of DACA and the importance of it.
And speaking of DACA, that leads right into our conversation. So yesterday, there was some big news coming out of that topic. The Supreme Court ruled by 4 majority that the President Donald Trump and his administration's appeal to do away with it essentially was blocked. It was not ruled. I just want to open up the conversation and get that going on your reaction. Both of you are DACA recipients as well. So just, Maribel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think every DACA recipient for the last, since Trump decided to wind down the program in 2017, every DACA recipient has been living in limbo, not knowing what's going to happen to the program, and Trump, aggressively attacking immigrants on all spectrums. When was it? It seems like such a long time ago, but on Wednesday night, at least, I was very anxious because we had heard that a decision would be coming any day soon. I personally was very anxious, and I was thinking of what that meant for, thousands and hundreds of thousands of DACA folks that are, living off of their work permits and their lives would, drastically change if a decision went in the negative route. I woke up that next day with the news that the court for now had decided that the way that Trump had tried to end DACA was not a legal way to do it. So it was a good short victory to celebrate in for what it was. But at least for me personally, I understood that that was not the end of this whole saga of trying to end DACA. I think I was very aware that it was a short-term victory because Trump and his administration have made it very, very clear that they want to take DACA away. So the celebration was very short. I think we all kind of took a breath and we're like, okay, for right now, for the next couple of months maybe, or who knows how long, we can keep our work permits, but that doesn't mean that our stay in this country is going to be, secured in any way, shape, or form. So I think, it was a small victory to celebrate for sure. I think a lot of people, were extremely ecstatic that at least they had this for now. But I think our responsibility as DACA recipients is to see what is next and actually push for more, because DACA is not the answer. DACA was never the answer. And we need to advocate for more for every single person that's undocumented in this country.
Okay. And Norberto, I want to toss it over to you. How did you react to the news?
Honestly, for me, it was a big reminder of my high school graduation day, because I graduated from high school June 15, 2012. And that's actually when the program got announced by Obama. And it was very similar to that feeling of my mom coming into the room, waking me up, right? Saying, hey, did you hear the news? Did you hear the news? I'm over here what are you talking about? What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of DACA. What? Are you serious? What did you say? Repeat it one more time. And it was just that feeling of the unknown, right? Of is this really happening? Is my security in this country really happening once again? And my permit, I just renewed it I just received a new permit in May. So I'm good for the next 2 years, depending on what happens in the near future, right? Because the unknown is still there, right? Although the Supreme Court did rule in favor, it's still not sure what the Trump administration is going to do. At the end of the day, we are in the middle of a presidential election, so it does lead to a lot of politics and can lead to many routes. I was actually in front of the White House on September 5th, 2017, when Jeff Sessions was announcing, the ending of the program. At that time, I was a volunteer with United We Dream, and I was actually, in front of the White House with a bunch of other undocumented folks from different organizations from across the state who were out there protesting. And we protested hard, for weeks and then months and now years. And, this Supreme Court decision doesn't come easy. And then we also have to look at the narrative of what's happening right now around the country, right? I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has a lot to do with the way that the court ruled. Imagine if the court ruled negatively. That's 800,000 more people. They're going to be joining out in the streets across this country, plus their families. So I believe that a lot of it has to do with the politics, but a lot of it also has to do with the way that the community has fought, not only nationally, but here locally. As advocates, we're always on the front lines, ready to go, always ready to defend our communities. And like Maribel said, I think now more than ever, we have our permits. This is like another chance, another opportunity where we have to fight for more and take advantage of our permit and our protection to defend those that have nothing.
Okay. And I wanted to actually then focus on the jobs that you do and the works that you do within the community. How has DACA allowed you to do what you do? And kind of talk to me about that. Maribel, if you want to take the lead on that.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously I have benefited from DACA for the last, I applied in 2012 when the program was launched. And you know what, but I actually was undocumented for all of my college career. I did not have DACA. I graduated college not knowing how I would be able to navigate with a college degree in a system built it's not accessible for undocumented folks. So that's where my passion comes for this work that I do in immigrant rights, because I already lived. I am
Maribel, I believe we lost you for a second there.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I have lived as an undocumented immigrant for now 28 years of my life in this country, right? My struggles that I have are the same ones that my parents have, the same ones as my family members have. When I applied for DACA, I was able to utilize my degree in different aspects of life. I was able to get a driver's license. I was able to find a job in the area that I went to school for. And that allowed me to immerse myself in an area where I am now working with directly impacted undocumented community members. Because I work with undocumented community members here in Long Beach, I still see what the challenges are for the immigrant community in California and around and across the country. If anything, DACA has provided temporary relief. Now I can go on a plane, sure, like with my ID without fearing, deportation, but even that's limited. Like if I get a speeding ticket, or, if I get arrested in one of these protests, like what does that mean for DACA? For my stay, or for my, am I going to be put in deportation proceedings? I should not be penalized for going out there and supporting Black Lives Matter and then fearing deportation in that sense. So it has provided a temporary relief, and it has allowed me to work. But as I continue to say, this is temporary. I don't know what's going to happen in a couple months. We're going to have to see, but for right now, I think many people are benefiting from the permit temporarily.
Norberto?
Yeah, I think that from my end, right, the work that I do is around housing and tenant right advocacy here in the city. And a lot of folks, right, who are being impacted are undocumented as well, right? It's a lower income minority communities that get impacted by the effects of gentrification and bad public policy that doesn't protect the most, the communities that need it the most. And so sadly, the immigrant community does suffer a lot from this. And luckily, as someone who is undocumented, I'm able to relate a lot of that pain with the tenants, what leads to, a struggle where we fight back. And I think that due to my status, it has allowed me to connect with a lot of more folks in a way that they see me as a person, not as a status. And that also empowers them to then fight even harder. And honestly, the folks that I've met, that I've worked with, tenants who are undocumented have fought harder than folks who have like citizenship or residency. And it's this constant fear of being kicked out of your home, right? Similar to the pain that we carry as undocumented DACA individuals. It's like if we lose this permit, we become vulnerable to getting kicked out of this country. Even with a permit, you can get kicked out of this country. So we're always fighting for home. So that pain that I carry, I always related to the work that I do, and I'm able to. I guess it's that motivation, right, to continue pushing and push harder to ensure that this person doesn't get kicked out of their home. It's just that fire that lives in me now, and like it's due to my status that has allowed me to really take on the work that I do with more passion and just more love for it. Because I see the pain, I hear it, I see it, and then it's also I feel it. And when we go and try to pass policy that's meant to protect the communities that we work with, and then we get no to as an answer, it's disappointing. But nonetheless, we continue to fight and we continue to resist, and that's why we're still here. And no matter what happens, like we're always gonna be fighting. We fought hard to be here, and we're gonna continue to be here.
Okay. And talking about DACA, DACA seems to be a protection to about 800 to 700,000 undocumented persons. If I'm not wrong, there's, I believe, over 11 million other individuals that are still undocumented. So while some view DACA as a great first step for immigration rights, what what more can be done, or what do you think? What other type of protections could be worked on?
I think that's for me, that's an easy, clear one. We need to abolish ICE. I don't think any system that benefits from the suffering of immigrant people should even exist. Up until fairly recently, that department was not part of the government. And so there is possibility that we can defund, we can abolish ICE. We need to get all immigrants, Black, brown, of any color, of any ethnicity, to on a path to citizenship. Many of the people in California and in the LA County are undocumented immigrants that have lived for over 10 years in this country. They are part of the communities. So DACA, yes, it's good for those that were, though they were children when they got here, now have temporary relief. But what about our parents? What about our aunts, uncles? At least personally, my family members have been here since the late 80s, and they are afraid to leave the city of Long Beach. They need protections too. And I think as DACA recipients, we have the privilege to not fear deportation right now, but that should give us the courage to also fight for our families and demand more, because DACA essentially are just crumbs just thrown out for what Beto said, political reasons, right? We are pawns in this political game. And honestly, I'm tired of it. I don't feel like my life should always be in limbo because people decide to play with policies that are inhumane, that, really affect the mental health of thousands of immigrants. So we have, as a community, have to support movements like Black Lives Matters, because those movements are going to unify, folks. There are Black immigrants, there are Muslim immigrants, undocumented. We need to come together in order to demand bigger change and concrete change that can benefit not just a small number of folks, but the entire 11 million of undocumented folks that are in this country.
Okay, Norberto?
Yeah, for me, I think it's very similar to Maribel's message, right? The abolishing of ICE, right, and how inhumane that department is. And having worked at the shelter, right, that was receiving a lot of the folks from the caravans out in San Diego at one point when I was out there, I got to see the conditions of the people that were being released after they had been detained, and I just can't imagine how folks are living inside of the what they would call the ice box. And some folks right now are currently locked up not only for months but for years before they're even deported. I've had close family friends that have gotten deported, right? And a lot of them said, I would have preferred to get deported right away than being locked up in the icebox where I was suffering. And so the inhumanity, right, of these systems that continue to oppress and continue to see us like, as political pawns, and, they have us using our political power in a way that we can't really push it forward because we're locked up fighting other systems. For example, we're either fighting to liberate our families, we're either fighting to liberate our brothers and sisters, and that takes a lot of energy, a lot of capital, right? That's why we can't sometimes push forward the way that we want to, because we're busy trying to release our families from detention. But the bigger picture is like, how do we really create a pathway to citizenship that includes all of us? This system, right? This whole country runs on immigrant labor. It runs on prison labor. And it's always going to be the idea of how do we get more off of somebody. And sadly, they use the systems to incarcerate folks to get that labor. And when we look at the fields, right, what's the predominant group that's working out in the fields in the hot sun, even during a pandemic? Immigrants are out there in the fields picking the food that we eat on our tables. And so why can't we become human and look out for one another? Like a lot of folks, right, say, well, if you don't like it here, get out of here. Well, I mean, we look back at the history of this country and how this country was established, right? Nobody was actually the original people of this land. And we stand on Tongva land in Long Beach, and that's the real people of this country. So who are the real immigrants of this country? And at the end of the day, look, a lot of folks say, hey, you know what, I'm a good Christian and all. If you're really a good Christian, you will look out for your brothers and sisters, regardless of anything, because that's what we should be doing. And so that's pretty much what all I have to say is like a pathway to citizenship. We understand that presidential election, a lot of it is going to be thrown out there that this is going to happen, just like any political race, whether it's a local one, whether it's a national one, right? We're being used as political pawns to get the votes.
Okay. And I think there has to be a bit more context as to what it is that a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, could, if not taken care of, can eventually lead to deportation. In society, it's understood that you try to strive to not commit murder, don't steal, and whatnot. So, is it a different kind of pressure? Can you kind of provide more context to that, Maribel?
Yeah, yes, I can start, definitely. So, for many years, I think myself and other folks that have DACA lived under a system of, we still are currently living, but with a mentality of, you know what, we have to do things the right way. And I say quote unquote, because, there's a lot to with that. But yeah, like, if I commit a crime, whatever that may be, that could jeopardize my my legal stay in this country. It's like, oh, then you start to think, what if I do get deported? What am I going to go ahead and do in a country where, like, I haven't been there since I was 2 years old? You have to think about that. But it's a very unrealistic expectation to have on people to be perfect throughout the entire lives. I think as humans, we are imperfect and we are bound to commit mistakes. But how is it that one mistake can define a person for the rest of their lives? I think we all know of folks that, are citizens and make many mistakes, and, nothing happens. But one person who is undocumented, one person who is DACA, makes a traffic violation, let's say it wants to be politically active, goes out on the street, gets arrested. How is that? So how is that one moment, one instance going to define a person for the rest of their lives? So it is an unrealistic expectation to have that of folks. As I said, no one is perfect. And we have to also like push back against making folks look like criminals when we are just trying to live our lives here in this country. We have to think twice about everything that we do, and that's just so tiring and unrealistic.
Norberto?
Yeah, for me, I think, when we talk about crime, right, like there's also social conditions that and I'm a sociologist, that's my training, my background, right? That's what I studied. And we also got to look at the conditions of the communities that people are living in, right? And how disenfranchised they are. And sometimes, when you don't have anything, it causes you to do something that you didn't want to do, but it's due to the conditions that you're living in and what you've seen. And so if we had more resources such as mental health, I think a lot of folks would defer from committing a crime. But then again, it's like Maribel is saying, right? Like we're being tried twice for the same crime. if you're a U.S. citizen, you won't be tried twice for the same crime. It's illegal. It goes against your constitutional rights. And so at the end of the day, it's like, we'll pay the price and we'll pay the time that we've done for whatever crime we've committed. But then we're faced with a second detention, right? And then the deportation. So we're being tried twice for the same crime. And I think that that shouldn't be the case. The way that the system works, once again, is just maintaining us locked up and, doesn't really allow us to move forward. Nobody ever wants to commit a crime, and there's different reasons on why crime happens. And I think if we really look at the root issue, right, and like, I think now more than ever the defunding of the police is a big message, right? And so if we start defunding money off of police and start investing it in the communities that need it the most, I think the crime rates that the mayor himself prides himself on would be lower, and I think our communities would be safer if we really invested in the mental health and well-being of our communities. If people had a stable home, people wouldn't have to worry about other things. They wouldn't have to worry on how they make money to make sure that they pay that rent bill. They wouldn't have to be deciding whether they pay rent or whether they pay for food. And so I think that when we really start investing in our communities is when we really lead to the political and the social change that we aspire to be.
And also just to also mention, Beto touches on a great point. The police, I think the police work with ICE. The police are actively looking and deporting people, even under a pandemic. They're putting people in detention centers where there is no medical evaluations, there's no medical treatments for folks with that COVID. They've been diagnosed with COVID. They're being sprayed with harmful chemicals. And, this is a link between the police working with ICE. And is it a coincidence that, people pre-COVID would go to court and then to pay a ticket or for some sort of hearing, and then maybe a couple of days later, ICE would be in their front doors? I don't think that's a coincidence. We know and we have tracked community member stories of interaction between police and ICE, and I think we all have to be aware that that's still happening even under this pandemic.
And I wanted to take the opportunity again to our viewers. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Norberto Lopez of Long Beach Residents Empowered and Maribel Cruz of the Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. And the topic of conversation, if you're joining in, is the Supreme Court's ruling yesterday supporting DACA, repealing the Trump administration's attempt to dismiss DACA. And so we have a question that came in, and would you be willing, so your decision to speak out and share your story publicly must come with great risk. Would you be willing to share any of the dangers or the intolerances that you've encountered in the advocacy that you do? Maribel?
Yes. So I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And I think when we go out, we have to physically, as people who believe in immigrant rights and just the wrongful just the wrong actions of private corporations benefiting from immigrants' bodies. We go out there and we are encountered by folks who are racist, and they're not afraid to tell you in your face, go back to your country. Or like the one instance that I really stuck to me was one time I was at, I believe, LA City Council meeting, and there was some anti-immigrant people, and they were saying, those children don't belong in the schools. And so, when you realize that people who are racist and anti-immigrant don't even see the humanity in children, this connects with the Trump administration and everything that I've been doing to target those children that have been stuck in the border and are now like missing. It's like no one finds the humanity in them, in the Black children, in the Black communities. It's like it's extremely frustrating and maddening to see this. But, we have to keep pushing through because we have to empower our communities. They have to see that folks are willing to fight for them. And, if that means that we're going to have to take some anti-immigrant racist comments, I can take it. But we know that we're doing it for a reason. We're fighting for a good cause, and it's worth it. For me, it's worth it.
Yeah, on my end, it's like, how far are you willing to go for the liberation of your people? right? How far are you willing to go for the liberation of everybody? And we say this, right, in a sense of we understand the work that we do comes with great risk, but we're still doing it because we care. And if we don't care, then who will? And why would I not do the work that I'm doing right now before it's too late? What if I was to get deported, right? Like, who's gonna fight for me if I never fought for anybody? And my advocacy, I'm in it for the long run. I'm in it for the community. When they were separating children, I was out there in Tornillo, Texas, shutting down a border to ensure that we would put a stop to the separation of children from their families. It is very inhumane to the point of how far we have to go in order to fight for our people, right? And the thing is that we're not just fighting for the Latino community. We're fighting for everybody. This is a bigger fight. This is for the liberation of everybody who's under the oppressive system that we live in. And at the end of the day, I think we're starting to see the system shake. And that's why a lot of the changes that are happening right now. I don't think a lot of the policies that are coming out from City Hall right now are happening just because the council members said, hey, I think it's time we start discussing this, or I think it's time we do this. No, it happens when we start demanding it and when we start taking the streets. And so the great risk that comes with being undocumented and out there in the streets comes with, deportation as one of them. It comes with being arrested. It comes with putting yourself at risk, right? Even worse than just racist comments, you can get shot. We've had hot encounters where we've had Trump supporters show up, with their guns on the side. And like, what do you do there? You don't have a right to carry a gun. You're undocumented. If you're undocumented, you don't have a right to purchase a weapon. Just to put that out there, right? Even right now, when we look at the laws that are in place, even though weed is legal in California, it's still a federal crime. And so if you're undocumented, you can get caught up. And so the biggest thing that I leave here saying is just, we are undocumented, we're unafraid, and we're unapologetic. And we're going to continue doing this work no matter what. And at the end of the day, if you take one of us out, there's a lot of more of us coming, right? And right now, I think is a moment where a lot of the youth that are in this country, thanks to social media, thanks to the broad network of grassroots organizations, more youth are going to get involved. And our country is going to be in a better position. Maybe not now, but at least in the next generation, the kids will lead our future.
And as we begin to wind down here, I just wanted to again thank you so much for coming onto the live chat with me. Norberto Lopez again with Long Beach Residents Empowered, and Maribel Cruz with Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. And to readers and viewers that tuned in, thanks so much. It's through donations and support to the Long Beach Post that allows us to conduct these discussions and have different points of views shared across. So again, if there's any closing remarks that you'd like to share.
Well, just last closing remarks, I want to encourage all folks viewing this to, look into, get involved into your city, the city politics, the budget. We want to go ahead and invest in our communities. We realize the negative effects of extreme policing in our brown and Black communities, and I encourage folks to go ahead and join that movement, and also go out and support Black communities in this time, because immigration not only affects the Latinx community, and I think that's something that a lot of people just think DACA just Latinx, but there's a lot of Black immigrants that are negatively affected by this as well. If any of your viewers are interested, we are going to have a quick debrief with an attorney on Tuesday talking about the DACA decision, what that means, and what the next steps are for folks in the Long Beach community. So we invite everyone to tune in on Tuesday at 2 p.m. through our Facebook.
And then just for me, I think that, we're all immigrants, right? Unless you're native to this land, unless you're indigenous to the land, like, we're all immigrants in this country. And that's only because someone decided that, hey, if you were born here after the establishment of this country, what they decided to call country, like, we're all immigrants at the end of the day. And, whether we came from Mexico or Europe, right, there's always going to be that preferential basis for folks who don't look a certain way. And so at the end of the day, like, we must continue to fight. And this is where allies need to step up, right? And this is where they need to start funding organizations like LBIRC, who are doing the work with the immigrant community and allowing to release our families from detention. They are the group that are helping release people from detention right now. They're the ones who are helping people stay home. The fight for home goes farther than just property. right? For me, it's a personal fight where I'm trying to stay in this country because this is where I'm calling home. And if the day comes where one day I do get kicked out of this country, it might have still been because I fought hard, and I'll be proud of that. But nonetheless, I'm not going to stop fighting. Even if I don't get kicked out, that's not going to deter me from fighting for our communities who need support. And that's why we are calling, right, for the defunding of the police and investing in our communities. And at the end of the day, this is indigenous land. And at the end of the day, we're all immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us.